What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Fight Life Studios. We are here with Anna Julaton. She has recently signed with ONE FC. She's going to be fighting with that organization. She's a professional boxer as well, multiple world champion titles. How's it going today?
Oh, it's going great. Cool. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Thank you for coming down. We know that you're really busy with your schedule and everything recently taking place with your signing and stuff. So we definitely thank you for making it down. Let's talk a little bit about this. You're already an international star for boxing, and now you're going into mixed martial arts. Let's talk about that decision.
Well, I have a background in martial arts. It's my first passion. I got into boxing because of martial arts, and so being able to just fully enthrall my whole life around boxing, I feel like now's the right moment. I got to talk with the president of ONE FC, Victor Cooey, and he presented this amazing opportunity where not only can I fight for MMA, fight for ONE FC, but also pursue my boxing career. So this is an opportunity for me to excel as a two-sport fight athlete. So I'm really excited about it.
All right, cool. Well, let's talk about that background that you have, in martial arts and how you feel it's going to transition into MMA.
I feel like with martial arts, it's all about technique, despite the size and so forth. It's all about being able to put yourself in a better position before your opponent. I have a background and black belt in Taekwondo, also with Kempo Karate. My father is a Wing Chun practitioner, so I do a lot of striking, a lot of inside fighting and so forth. And, just being able to have all of that and have it just, just put together with boxing, it gets me just pumped up, since martial arts is my first passion, I feel like I'm back into my childhood days, it brings that element out of me. So with this opportunity to fight in all over Asia, it has 1 billion viewership there. How can you pass something like that up?
Right. That is something that a lot of people tend to overlook. Everybody considers the UFC to be the giant, but when it really does boil down to viewerships and a lot of other things, you can't really compete with the Asian markets. So it is an excellent opportunity for you to blow up in MMA. People already know who you are, but in mixed martial arts, doing what that is. Let's talk a little bit about the game planning and transitioning, because like you said, you have that background in Taekwondo, then boxing. Obviously, things like stances, footwork are completely different in all those different sports. So let's talk about your training.
Yeah, it's funny because with martial arts, they're different styles will, have a certain core method, and you can find that same methodology in different arts. You just have to be experienced enough and just kind of be a little bit more versed in the martial arts to kind of see the threads of continuity. So everything is, as long as you can break something down into its basic element, it's readable. You know what I mean? So just with that said, I kind of feel like there's this quote that I just absolutely love from Miyamoto Musashi. I don't know if you're familiar with
Book of Five Rings.
Yes, Book of Five Rings. And he would say, to know one way is to know all ways. And, a couple years ago, I was talking with Eric about it. I was working Jiu-Jitsu back in 2009 because I was actually thinking of transitioning into MMA. But I ended up getting a call for a world title fight for boxing. And I'm like, hey, let's do it. I won my first world title and it changed my life. So a few years later, here I am, just being able to make the transition. It's just, for me personally, I feel like I can see the lines, and it's all about to its root element of positioning. Can I get there before this other person? And I already know what this person's going to do because this is their style, this is their game. You have to be intuitive, and you have to be able to be very versatile, and you have to adapt on the moment, just like in boxing. So I feel like I have that ability into something like this.
It is something that a lot of people don't ever pay attention to. A lot of people go in and they train and they wonder why they're not getting better. But, there are people like yourself that have that outlook where I guess when everything you do is very precise. So I find that amazing that you can, talk about it that way, because not too many people look at the sports broken down to where it's like, okay, I've excelled here. This is how I did it. It was about focused training. So, let's talk about how you developed that edge.
I'd say it's a long time coming. I got to train with Manny Pacquiao and Freddie Roach in my earlier parts of my professional boxing career, and it was hard to kind of empty my cup because all of my background was just martial arts. So I'm used to seeing certain lines versus boxing. It's a little bit different. You have to, learn and achieve different styles in it. And there was this one thing that Manny said that just, to this day I still think about. He said, at the end of the day, it's still a sport. And I'm thinking, this guy just had killers in the sparring ring with them, and you're trying to go after each other. But instead of calling it a fight, he called it a sport. And so I had to, it took me years to kind of understand that concept. And so here I am, and I still have that in the back of my head, and that's how I kind of see the fighting arts, whether it be boxing or mixed martial arts.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the jiu-jitsu side of it. Obviously you said that you've been working on that for a while. How's that part of it?
I love it. It's funny, I had a conversation about it earlier where with jiu-jitsu, it's the type of style where you don't necessarily need a lot of aggression. It's all about pure technique. In fact, the more tense that you are, the easier it is for your opponent to gain an advantage over you. And there's this terminology in boxing that goes where you don't want a boxer to get caught up in a fight. So if you're using your distance, you're using your footwork, and you're trying to keep, staying with your game, but you have a brawler that's coming out after you, and they're trying to make it into a fight, you don't want to get caught up in the fight. I feel like with a jiu-jitsu practitioner, they can easily have their opponents get drawn into a jiu-jitsu fight, playing into their game. So I was told in boxing, styles make fights. In martial arts, I was told that you never want to bring a knife to a gunfight. So, you just got to be careful with your positioning and stuff. So that's jiu-jitsu to me. Cool.
Have you ever worked on, let's say, the other element, like the wrestling?
Yeah, wrestling, man, it's intense. It's tight. I had a few of my friends who have big wrestling backgrounds and stuff, and they're showing me the techniques, and they're showing me how a wrestler would think. So I got to apply some of it. And it's actually quite easy as long as you don't think too much about it. Kind of like Bruce Lee, kick is a kick, a punch is a punch, but you don't want to get too caught up with the technique. It's all about the timing and knowing exactly which key points you want to go after right at that moment. You know what I mean? So with wrestling, it's completely different than jiu-jitsu. Obviously, they're both ground games, but they have like their own methodology of fighting.
Right. Because I grew up wrestling and kickboxing, and the thing was, when I first started doing jiu-jitsu, I had a really hard time because it's constant aggression in wrestling, and it's basically it's a rough sport because all you're doing is whoever can outmuscle the other one for the most part. There is technique, it's very subtle, but you see it with the really, really good guys. But yeah, I mean, that part of the jiu-jitsu, when I stepped into that, man, I get myself in a bad positioning, easy. So that's why I'm always kind of curious, especially when somebody's building this MMA base, how the wrestling is always kind of coming along, because that's, a lot of people say that's probably one of the harder points for them to have to pick up on.
Yeah, it's really demanding, no doubt about that. I almost feel like it's a martial arts way of football.
Right.
You just got to come right at them.
Yeah, that's definitely a good way of looking at it. So let's get back to the stuff with ONE FC, and how you kind of said that they got in contact with you, but you are one of the only fighters that's going to be able to do the two sports. What does that mean to you?
Oh, it means exactly that. I mean, it's for me, I've always had a passion with the fighting arts, and just to have an opportunity like this is just something that you just can't leave to rest. If I were to say no to something like that, 10, 20 years down the line, when, if I'm not actively in the fight games anymore, I'm going to sit there and think, what the heck were you thinking about? Why'd you, not take that offer, take that deal? And for me, I feel like with ONE FC, I feel like it's a real true test for a warrior. And I really want to test out, my skills and everything that I've put my entire life into for the past, I've been doing martial arts for over 20 years. And so I feel like this will be a great outlet to kind of see where I'm at. You know what I mean? So for me, I feel like I have that competitive spirit. I just want to enthrall in it. I want to live in the moment, and I just want to go right to it.
Now let's talk a little bit about the rule set, because they're basically pride rules.
Mm-hmm.
You can do soccer kicks, kick down opponents, all those type of things. Do you think that was going to play well into your background and the way that you transition?
Sure, why not? I mean, I think, despite what the rules are, you got to be prepared for anything. In boxing, for instance, there's no elbows and there's no grabs and stuff like that. It happens, in one of my fights, I ended up getting an elbow, and it cut part of my eyebrow, and I'm like, okay, great. That wasn't even a punch. It was just a freak accident, right? So for ONE FC to have the authentic rules, yeah, it's intense. No doubt about it. I'm staying legit with my training. I'm making sure everyone's all on board. I'm on board. But I think that's what makes it so unique, and just kind of like what is called authentic rule. That's how fighting should be like. And so I'm just glad to be a part of something like that. I think it's something that I would like to experience in my lifetime, you know what I mean? Just to be able to say, hey, I was in the cage, and you know what? They had this thing called authentic rules where you can have soccer kicks when you're laid out on the floor. So, you know, in boxing, they always say protect yourself, the same damn thing over in 1FC.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about camps, because you've obviously done tons of boxing camps. What's the major difference for you doing preparation for MMA versus preparation for boxing?
It's kind of crazy. Just being in boxing for like 10 years, like I've grown to learn that the higher up you get up there, the more advanced you get, more people would want to try and copy and just kind of record, videotape, and so forth, or try to get you distracted. And I feel like with all the different arts that are involved in mixed martial arts, it's no different. Everyone has their own moves. If you go to different camps, they have like their own go-to technique that they will want to do. That's not necessarily traditional in the arts, you know what I mean? So you kind of have to have your own secret way of training, and it's kind of like, you know, old school Shaolin monks, you know, training for you know, protecting their monastery and so forth. So I feel like at this level, it's you gotta keep everything secretive.
All right, perfect. So when can we expect to see you step in the cage?
May 2nd is the day of the fight. It'll be in Manila, Philippines, at the Mall of Asia. I'm excited. It's supposed to be sold out with 20,000 people coming in to watch it live, with 1 billion viewership all over the continent of Asia. A whole entire continent of over 70 countries are going to be watching. So for me, I'm excited about that, but obviously I'm more focused on the fight at hand, and as soon as everything is done, I'll be able to just kind of digest that whole idea. But yeah.
So, you know, that is something I was wondering about, because you do know how big the arena itself is. You know, that many viewers, does that ever add any pressure, or do you think that boxing has kind of smoothed that over for you?
Yeah, I have to attribute a lot of, you know, dealing with pressure with boxing, because on my first fight, I had to fight a girl who had 11 pro fights and had already world title fight experience already. You know, I dropped her twice, but it's been a hard road. On my fourth, with only 4 wins, I ended up winning a world title against a veteran of the sport and a legend of the sport, and I ended up getting to just, you know, escalate and escalate and escalate, where I ended up going to other people's hometowns, their you know, different countries for world title fights. On one of them, I fought in front of 40,000 people in Argentina, where everyone in there was just rooting against me. So to take all of that and just kind of say, hey, you know, that's a day in the life as a boxer. What's 20,000 people and 1 billion people watching you on the day of a fight? At the end of it all, just like in a boxing ring, it's still a square ring, as they call it. And you just got to focus on your fight. You got to focus on your game. You got to focus on you. It's you at the end of the day.
Perfect. Now, you know, if anybody wants to follow you, social media or otherwise, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Okay. As long as I get my name right, you could find me. AnnaJulaton.com. So Anna, A-N-A, so 1 N, Julaton.com. You could plug that same name for Facebook, so Anna Julaton Official, Twitter, Instagram, so forth. Just get my name right.
Perfect. Well, you know, we definitely want to thank you for taking the time to come down, talk to us about, you know, your big signing there with the 1FC, and we look forward to seeing that fight. So thank you for coming in.
Thanks for having me.